Welcome to Unmuted. I'm your host, Judge E.J. Russell, and I have a fabulous guest with me today to talk all things Mississippi politics. Representative Johnson.
Hi.
Minority Leader.
Yes.
Welcome to Unmuted.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what's going on over in the state capitol.
Well, I feel like I'm talking to somebody who probably knows as much as I do. You know, we've been at this for close to 30 years.
Oh, don't tell anybody. I'm only 29.
But, well, you know, the Capitol things are going as they typically do. You know, we are a bipartisan legislature in the sense that the Republicans and the Democrats, so everything is always a little bit of a butting of heads. But there is, we've had some indication this year that maybe we'll find some things we can find some common ground on. And so it's early, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful to hear, because usually about this time in the first year, we already know that you got to put your brass knuckles on.
That's right.
Get ready to fight for your life.
Right. Well, you know, there have been some things, you know, that we've taken up in the session that the governor touts as, you know, the greatest things in the world, which is good. Anytime you create opportunity here in the state, that's good. But I continue to talk and continue to remind people there's a whole population, a whole section of the state that hadn't been any economic development in 30 years. And that's everything west of I-55. The governor seems to focus on certain areas. If you follow where his votes come from, that's pretty much, or where his friends give the most money from, that's where you see economic development. I mean, we just spent $500 million, $529 million on a battery plant in Marshall County. And so, you know, when the question comes up, what about Hinds County and west of I-55? And people say, well, Continental Tire, but Continental Tire is western part of Hinds County. All the money went to the Clinton Public School District, which is the smallest school district in Hinds County. I'm going somewhere with this. Mm-hmm. And so even though you may create some jobs, the two largest school districts in the county, which are majority black, didn't get any money. And so this penchant to create jobs and opportunity in areas and exclude a whole population of people, even if it's located there, is just gets a little bit tiring. I'll give you a perfect example, another example, $529 million in Marshall County. Holly Springs owns its own utility. Can you imagine how profitable, how invigorating it would have been for the city of Holly Springs for this new plant to have a contract with their utility? They're in Marshall County, but they're contracting to get all their power from a utility outside of Marshall County. And so, but Marshall County is majority black. Holly Springs Utility District is Holly Springs majority black city with a black mayor, and they not making a dime. $529 million, and that money doesn't transfer into the entire population. So, you know, I try to tell people that I don't want to see anybody not get anything, but I also think that if the state is going to spend $529 million of taxpayers' money, that everybody ought to benefit. And so,
well, and the interesting thing about it is kind of in your face.
Oh, it is.
Made no bones about it.
No.
Okay, we're going to be in Marshall County, majority black, but then we're going to take all of the money and take it outside of Marshall County.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And then I often remember to say, well, if you're going to do that, let's guarantee that let's actually say that at least 70% of the jobs have to be Mississippi residents. Somebody said, is that legal? I said, they do it everywhere. They do it in Louisiana. They do it all over the country where they try to protect the people in their state. And they wouldn't go for that amendment. We're right on the Tennessee line, which means that you're probably going to have a lot of people coming over to Tennessee, from Tennessee, to work at this plant once it's built, if it's built, and then they'll go back home. So, you know, my interest is making sure that the people of the state of Mississippi, not just mine, but you know, a lot of legislators, some don't have the courage to vote the way they want to vote, but they understand what the dynamic is and what we ought to be working on, what we ought to protect. So those are kind of things we've done. And we did another one, Amazon. You know, I tell somebody, Amazon is owned by Jeff Bezos. He's worth $180 billion.
Billion with a B, y'all.
B. And I said, you know, you could take You could take $80 billion of his money. He could run the state of Mississippi for 20 years. Our state budget runs at about $4.5 to $5 billion a year. He could run the state of Mississippi for 20 years. He'd still be worth $100 billion. So, but we gave him money. We're taking money to attract Amazon. We spent $44 million of state money to, get them here. All of that is fine. But again, we're not doing any economic development where a large segment of the population who look like me and you, where they live, and that's just unconscionable. For 30 years from the Tennessee line to the Louisiana line, there's been no economic development. These are counties and communities that are on the river. They have short rail, long rail, east and west. The river flows north and south. They all have ports. You have rail, highways, all the things that you say you need for economic development. I've been always taught to do that. For some reason, they can't find anybody who wants to be located where you have all the requisite infrastructure for moving commerce in and out that you'd want. So we'll continue to beat that drum. We'll continue to support projects in other places. We didn't vote against it. We will not. We'll support fellow Mississippians wherever they're creating jobs. But we have to continue to say, let's do it everywhere. And so that's what we're doing.
And they've identified, I believe, $30-something million for workforce development.
Workforce training, yeah.
Workforce training.
Yeah,
what does that look like?
$44 million for this Amazon project will be used for workforce training. And they're also going to take, I think $10 million has been committed to the HBCUs for technology training for students or people who want to get that. So that's a good thing. But we should be doing that all over the place. Southwest Mississippi, we have Alcorn State University, Colin Community College, those kind of opportunities. That kind of training is going there too. We meet all the requirements that you need in terms of training and having people there. All we need to do is for the governor to direct his agency, because we don't run the MDA. The governor runs the MDA.
Right.
They do what the governor says. So, all we need to do is say, hey, let's take care of everybody. A good friend of my colleague, Brian Clark, said, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Don't continue to make that link that where we live, the weak link, because at some point it won't exist. And that is not good for the state of Mississippi.
Well, and when you start talking about workforce training or development and our universities, I know you mentioned Alcorn because that's down in your neck of the woods, as they say, from the area that you represent.
Yeah.
But Hinds County, 80-something% African American.
Right.
And you have 7 universities.
Keep talking.
7 universities, and you can't find some kind of a partnership to get them to develop whatever it is that a business would need to bring here?
That's an excellent point. I didn't know it was 7, but you're right. When I start counting in my head, you got 7 universities. Hinds County, I mean, everything ought to start and begin at Hinds County. I mean, this is the state capital.
Exactly.
This is where this is our largest urban center. This is where Jackson State University, University Medical Center, Belhaven, Millsaps, you can go down the line, Hinds Community College. You got all the training, all the partnership that you need to get that done. And the mayor, when he's touting Amazon, all that money that's coming in Amazon, that $10 billion project, that tax base, that money that's going to go to schools is going to go to Madison County schools.
Yes.
Hinds County schools need it more than anybody. They already have Nissan out there. What are you going to do in Hinds County to provide that kind of support that you need? The other thing is that it's when you have that kind of a starting point, everything moves out. It would be a great thing for the state of Mississippi, but the governor, understanding that how it looks, he doesn't say that we're doing Amazon in Madison County. He says in the Jackson metropolitan area.
Yeah, now, I heard that.
Yeah, that's a little bit disingenuous, but we'll keep. There's a heart there somewhere in that body.
You think?
I think so, and we'll keep, knocking at that door until somehow he relents and recognizes that he needs to do something a little bit different.
Well, I hope you're right, because as I travel around the metro area, it almost seems like the roadways that are being built to kind of take us around the city of Jackson. And it's very tragic.
I think that's a clear observation. I mean, you're exactly right about that.
We'll be right back after this break. We're back with Unmuted, and I'm sitting here with Minority Leader of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Representative Robert Johnson. Yeah. You were saying before we went on our break.
Well, you brought up a good topic. Sometimes people don't look at the building and the infrastructure, what's going on around them. And you acknowledge and have observed that you look at the way highways and the way they're building things, that everything is being done around and not in Hinds County. And so that takes the economic base from the city, and it starts to lose population as well. People want to live where things are happening, where it's easy to get back and forth to work. And all I was saying is that as you find in a large city that's governed, it's hard to govern. People, have different interests. And so Jackson and Hinds County gets criticized because people are always arguing and fighting with each other. But it happens in every big city.
Everyone.
And so it's not unusual. But I would continue to work with them and encourage them to recognize who the real enemy is. I hate to use that word, but who the real fight is really with, and do all they can to protect the city. Because I believe in it. I tell people, whether we're talking about Jackson State or the city of Jackson, where goes Jackson goes the rest of the state. Where goes Jackson State goes the rest of our universities. This is where it happens, and we need to get refocused on that.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And this is a conversation I had, I think, when the Divine Nine came together for a day on instead of a day off on Martin Luther King. A very spirited conversation about what's happening and not happening in Jackson, and where people need to work harder to see it happen. Right now in Jackson, and I think some money may be coming from the state. I know the city is putting some in there about homelessness. And there's a plan. It's an abandoned city property surplus that this group wants to build like 60 tiny houses for homeless
I've heard
folk.
about that.
Yeah, to go in and transition, get some workforce training and get themselves healthy and maybe get a driver's license and those kinds of things so that they can go to work somewhere. So it wouldn't be a permanent place, but it would be a roof over someone's head and a meal or two every day and those kinds of things. And one of the councilmen in Jackson, in the ward where it's going to be located, is opposed. And I just said, tell me, because his idea is if you make this attractive, then everybody's going to come to Jackson the homeless. Well, everybody's coming to Jackson anyway. They drop them off here is what is alleged.
Well, it's been proven they are. If they find a homeless person in Madison County, they pick them up and drop them off in Hinds County. And I'm glad you brought that up. You're right about all of that. And I hate to see him oppose that or her oppose it, whoever it is.
It's a him.
It's a him, okay. Because you should look at it as stymieing a problem, stopping it before it gets out of hand. Because the homeless are with us. They're not getting ready to leave.
They're not going
and so you better do something about it. I don't think it makes it more attractive. The plan you described says you're trying to get people where they won't be homeless forever. You're trying to get them back on their feet. And that's a good way to alleviate the problem. We got a big mental health problem here in the state. And one of the things that we talk about is the lack of mental health funding. You got people there locking people up in jail who really should be getting psychiatric and other kind of help to help them get back on their feet. And so this what you just described is cut out of that fabric of things we want to do to try to remedy a problem, try to help things get better. And so, there's no instant fix. And so I hope this councilman would find a way to understand this is a solution that is going to be a long-term solution that in the end is going to be a great thing for everybody. But you don't, just by ignoring it or pushing it away, is not going to solve the problem.
Right. And Jackson, in that regard, needs all the help it can get because San Francisco ignored a homeless problem. And downtown is out of control. The homeless are running that downtown area, which used to be so wonderful.
Yeah. So, we don't want that to happen. But, again, it goes back to my original point. If you were putting money into the areas and helping to fortify these areas with good jobs, good opportunity, good economic development, those kind of things, then there would be more room, more places for people to go, more opportunity, and you'd have less of what you're talking about. You wouldn't have as big a problem.
Right.
They wouldn't be in Jackson. They'd be in Sharkey County or some places where, everybody doesn't want to be in an urban city. They'd like to be somewhere else, but if there are no jobs and opportunity there, there's nothing for them to do. So we want to continue to focus on that, but as long as we have the kind of leadership that's one-sided and doesn't represent everybody, we're going to have that problem. But I'll go back to how we started the show. I'm encouraged by at least the appearance and the suggestion by the speaker that we're going to do better. We're going to work, together better. But the jury's still out on that. We'll see how it goes.
Well, and one thing people have to remember, my mom used to say it all the time. If you are digging a ditch for someone else, just remember, you got to stay there to make sure that they stay in that ditch.
That's exactly right.
So if we could just move the entire population, everybody would move.
That's right.
Instead of you trying to keep some in a ditch.
Yeah.
Because you and your folk may have to stay there to keep them in the ditch.
Yeah, which leads me into another issue. It's perfect that you brought that up, this whole Medicaid issue.
Yes.
So Medicaid expansion, we've turned down for the last 8 or 9 years $1 billion a year. Probably more than that. The total now is estimated that we have forfeited $14.5 billion that could have gone into our healthcare system. And so people like the governor think that it only affects these poor rural areas. But if you have had anybody in the hospital.
And black folks.
And black folks, right. Mm-hmm. But if you had anybody in the hospital, our best medical centers are here in town, St. Dominic's, Baptist, UMC. And, somebody was talking to me about some of the professionals working there that, no, we're not closed down, but where there used to be 8 nurses to a floor, now you got 2. Mm-hmm. So your services are not what they ought to be. You're not getting the kind of treatment and the kind of health care you need. Doctors can't work under those conditions, so a lot of them are moving away. So while you think hospitals are closing in Belzona or Clarksdale, the truth is your hospital may not be closing, but you're not getting the kind of medical care that you need to get in where you live. So that's a ditch they're digging for themselves.
Well, and it's amazing you say that because there are so many areas in Mississippi where there are no obstetricians.
Oh,
none. You got to drive 2 hours.
No OBGYNs. For in the Delta, there's only one pediatrician for every 4,000 children.
Impossible to treat.
You can't treat them. And that's our future. That's those and children. Why would you want to see children not have the kind of health care that they need? Right here in Hinds County, the Merritt Hospital in South Hinds County closed down the neonatal unit, and now they don't even have an emergency room. So how is that progress? And so while you're saying, no, we don't want that federal money, even though we already, the Medicaid budget is $6 billion, it's bigger than the state budget. So we're taking $4.5 to $5 billion in federal money already in the Medicaid program.
Right.
If you weren't taking it, you couldn't have a UMC, St. Dom. These hospitals wouldn't stay open anywhere. So now you're saying you don't want to take the money they're giving you to do that. That'll keep everybody open. And while you have emergency room closing and people are driving 40 or 50 miles just to get to the hospital, that's unconscionable, and it's not good public service.
It's not. Go ahead.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't know, how does it affect hospitals? When they passed the Hill-Burton Act back in 1968, they passed it to create public hospitals all over the country. And why? Not because they were money makers, they were profitable. They did it because somebody has wisdom enough to understand that public service means everybody's entitled to health care. So they wanted, no matter where you live, a poor area, a rich area, everybody would have a hospital. And that's why we get they're offering us $1 billion a year because they want to keep these hospitals open. Not because they're economic driven machines. Some of them are.
People need access.
But people need access. If you got a hospital and you keep people healthy, you got doctors working at these hospitals, then you have a healthy workforce. Then you can attract industry. People want to live there. But if you don't have a hospital and you have doctors, who wants to live where you don't have doctors? And that's a reality in the state of Mississippi. So people need to understand when the governor said, and I've heard the former speaker say this, well, maybe everybody doesn't need a brick and mortar hospital. Well, I don't know who that everybody is.
I don't
But
either.
everybody I know needs one. So.
But I tell you what, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Unmuted. I'm Judge E.J. Russell, your host, here with Representative Robert Johnson, the third representative. That's the first time I put that on there, representing Adams County, but is also the minority leader in the Mississippi House of Representatives. We were talking about the need for Medicaid or more money from the state budget, and I don't think the state budget has more money.
Not the kind of money we need to keep hospitals open, but there's $1 billion out there waiting on us. And I know out of our Democratic caucus, we've already dropped at least 3 Medicaid expansion bills that would take advantage of that. I talked to Legislative Services today, and I've talked to the Speaker. He's still working on something. We've gotten ours in. In fact, we introduced another bill today that we are hoping we'll get some bipartisan support. It's Medicaid expansion, but it's one that tries to meet all the requests, all the things that Republicans say we got to have. They want people to work if they're on Medicaid. I said, look, first of all,
the reason they're on Medicaid is they can't work. They already too sick.
Right. And so, the truth is CMS, the service that approves all these waivers, will in most cases never approve that because it's not designed that way. But the people we're trying to take care of already are working. Expansion will cover people who are already working.
And those who are underinsured,
or don't make enough money to buy insurance. That's the idea. I mean, we have the highest poverty rate in the country, the lowest per capita income. So people are working every day.
And the sickest people. We die at a rate greater than anybody else. We've got health issues, diabetes, heart disease.
Highest rate of diabetes, highest rate of heart disease, highest rate of high blood pressure.
You name it, we're number one if it's bad.
It's bad. And so we have a duty to do better. I mean, we have a responsibility to do better. And so, the idea that we are turning down the money that would keep our people healthy, that would keep our workforce healthy, to keep our economy going. Medicaid expansion would create over 9,000 new jobs, healthcare jobs, at a rate of $60,000 to $65,000 a year.
And so, 9,000 jobs.
Right.
Plus, you're now going to be taking better care of your people.
You absolutely will. And you'll attract doctors, more medical professionals that will come to the state because there's work for them to do. Which is so ridiculous when you hear the governor talk, we're creating 1,000 jobs in Marshall County. They cost us $500 million to create. And somebody wants to give us $1 billion to create other jobs. So it's craziness.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah, it is hypocrisy. And everything doesn't have to be political. And that's what they've made it. The only reason we don't take that money is because an African-American president designed and built a plan that works and is working everywhere, the Affordable Care Act. And we've jumped through all kinds of hoops to call it Medicaid expansion or anything else but the Affordable Care Act. But that's the only reason you don't take it. They won't take it because of that. And so,
call it something else.
Yeah, give
it a new name.
Yeah, call it whatever you want to call it.
If it will help you help the people.
Call it Save a Life. Whatever
Save
you want.
A Life, yes. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds great.
Sounds like a bill you need to introduce.
Well, call it Tate Reeves Save a Life.
Yes.
That'd be fine. Maybe he'll like that.
We don't care what you call it.
Yeah, we don't care what you call it. Just
help.
Take care of our folks. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
But I look at, and people in my caucus and people in the legislature who are Republicans or otherwise, understand that our duty, we're not here to regulate a woman's body. We're not here to talk about, transgender issues. That's not what people elect us to do. They elect us to make sure they got good roads and bridges, good public schools, adequate health care, good health care, and to make sure they got good public safety. That's what we're here to provide a service that makes people be able to go to work every day, live a healthy life, be able to put a roof over their heads, and send their kids to school where they can build a future. That's what we're here for. And so they get wrapped up in all these issues. Somebody sent me a bill just now that said that IHL has to prohibit money going to schools to sororities and fraternities. Why would anybody care that identify transgender or transgender issues within their sorority or fraternity? Why do you care? Why do you spend any time doing any of that? And that bill hopefully won't go anywhere. But why are we wasting time with legislation on things like that? When 28% of our roads and bridges are either out of spec or impassable. I mean, they're dangerous. You can't do anything with them. And everybody in the state has water sewer problems, have pipes and systems that are 100 years old that need to be replaced. Why don't we working on that? Why don't we do something about that?
Well, and I know last year the governor was promoting in his campaign ads.
Yeah.
He was promoting the notion of transgender, men trying to compete in women's sports and those kinds of things.
Where does that happen in the state of Mississippi?
Wait a minute, nowhere.
Right.
Because they asked the Mississippi High School Athletic Association how many people had tried to do that. Zero. So you're trying to find a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, but you won't work on the problems that do exist, and everybody knows they exist.
Yeah. Look, look, in the Democratic community, in the Black community, socially, we're just as conservative as anybody else.
Or more.
Or more, yeah. Don't talk about bringing somebody talking about transgender up in any of our churches or anything.
Exactly.
They will send you home. So that's not an issue for us. That's not an issue in this state. And so we're wasting time talking about it. So we just try to stay focused on doing those things and keep working. People ask me, you've been doing this. I was 11 years in the Senate. I've been 19 years in the House. So why do you keep doing it? The energy and the passion I have for it is because I still love this state, and I think we have a job to do. So we'll continue to do that.
And you're doing a great job. I just want to applaud that.
Well, thank you.
Especially when you have to put your brass knuckles on. You don't mind putting the brass knuckles on, but you do it with grace and gentility.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, that's high praise coming from you, because I know how regimented and how important doing things the right way, how important that is to you. So I'm doing it the right way. If you say I'm doing it the right way, I'm doing it the right way.
All right. Well, I appreciate that compliment there. But what other things are high on the list? We've talked about Medicaid expansion. We've talked about trying to get somebody to understand that economic development needs to come to Hinds County or west of I-55.
Yeah.
So
the other issue is, we continue every year to fight and support public education. So our fight this year apparently will be about whether or not we adopt laws to allow school choice. And school choice sounds like a nice name of it, but all it is people want to take and give public money to private schools. And so we have to continue we have yet to fully fund our educational system. And everybody wants to talk about it. But we spend education our largest budget. So it's our largest budget. It's also our largest need, and it's our most important thing that we can do. And so we don't need to start perpetuating or encouraging, private schools when we have never done anything to support public schools in our state. So we are working and trying to develop, anticipating that there's going to be a surge or a move afoot to do that. And so we're trying to not only fight it, but in the event that we can't beat it all the way down, try to develop ideas and plans to make sure that we continue to protect our public school system. People talk about how much money we spend, but there are children in this state are going to school where there's no central heat or air. 40% of the state, even though we've gotten federal money for broadband, 40% of the state, we haven't done it yet, 40% of the state is still not covered by broadband. So
I live in one of those areas.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So there are children who are trying to do homework that don't have access to Wi-Fi. They are driving up to a local Walmart or to McDonald's or somewhere that has a Wi-Fi where they can sit in the car and do homework. And so in this day and age, in this highly technical age and society, the kids in Mississippi should not be left behind when it comes to that. And so when people say, well, we spend a lot of money on education, you're not spending enough. And you're not spending it aggressively enough, and you're not working hard enough to make sure children are keeping up with everybody else in the world. And nobody needs to be more concerned about that than the leadership in the state of Mississippi. So public education is still a big deal, and it's something we need to work on. The other issue is, since we're in Hinds County, we're hoping we don't have any more of this taking over the city legislation.
Wait for it.
Yeah, but that's a high hope. But we know how things work. So we're trying to make sure that no more of that happens. But to the extent that it does, we just have to continue to make sure that we protect the city of Jackson and Hinds County from a hostile takeover from the rest of the state.
We'll be right back after this break. We are back with Unmuted. I'm sitting here with Representative Robert Johnson III, minority leader for the Mississippi House of Representatives. And you mentioned House Bill 1020. Oh, Lord.
We not that we hadn't talked about it enough everywhere, but we need to continue to talk about it.
Exactly.
Because it's a dangerous piece of legislation for Jackson Hinds County, because it doesn't bode well for anywhere else in the state. When a person says they can come over and take over your capital city, when they think they can do that, they can do that anywhere if they can do it here. So, but I was talking about, we were talking about issues in the legislature that may come up, but that 1020, the CCID issue, we don't think we'll see any more of that. But the idea that you're going to come in and create 4 judgeships that are not elected, and no residency requirements. They can come from anywhere. You could have a judge in Hinds County making decisions for the people in Hinds County who's from Pontotoc or somewhere, that's never been here. And that doesn't make any sense. It's not right, and we argue that it's not constitutional. And as a judge, you understand how important it is to have some connection to the area where you are, because you can understand the dynamics and you can understand what the needs are in that community. People very rarely, the voting public understands how important the judicial system is. And so one thing that this has done is help us communicate and highlight how important you should be, how concerned you should be, how you elect your judges and who you choose to be a judge. So that part of the CCID is probably one of the things that offended me the most. But it leads me to talk about what else we're dealing with this session, and that'll be judicial redistricting. We think that there's an opportunity to elect more judges of color in this central district on the appeals court. And there's a lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU that is challenging the way we draw out judicial districts. So there will be a more balanced and more representative judiciary. We only have, I think, 2 black appeals judges and 1 Supreme Court judge. And so that's, we're 38 to 40% of the state. And so that should not be the case. And so we're working on all those things. So that is one of those are the issues, the big issues that we're looking at facing. I continue to work on criminal justice issues. I've dropped, and several of us have dropped, a number of bills that are trying to reduce our prison population. Nonviolent offenders, people who have been arrested for drug possession shouldn't be in prison for 3 or 4 years. And to the extent that they are, we should release them, expunge their records, and let them at least try to get back to work, reestablish themselves into their communities and their society. That would cut down 45,000 people. It would take 45,000 people out of 19,000 people we have in prisons, in private prisons here in this state. The other issue is we ought to get rid of the 85% rule. If we're going to elect judges and have judges, let's go back to having judges having discretion and being able to decide whether or not a person should be in prison, or whether or not at all, whether they should have probation, or whether you can find an alternative way to rehabilitate them. Judges had just begun to be really creative when we passed that 85% rule, understanding and finding ways of punishment that were more focused on rehabilitation. But if all you're doing now is going to court and find a person guilty or not guilty, and when they're guilty, all the judge can do is say, well, I got to follow these guidelines. Even though I don't think you ought to be in prison for 10 years, the guidelines say you have to. That is just a waste of time. It packs our prisons. And I know why we do it. I mean, everybody knows why we do it. We have private prisons. The only way they stay open is that you got to fill them up with people. And we should not be in the business of supporting an industry that makes their living on human capital. And that is just wrong, and we need to stop it. And so we continue to work on those kind of issues as well.
Well, and you may not know this number, but I recall from the past that even though we may be that 38% of the population, we are more than 60% of the prison population.
That's right.
And I think that's by design too.
It is by design.
You know, this is Mississippi, and they're still fighting the Civil War.
They are. There's a strong argument to be made that prisons are like the new form of slavery. That's what private prisons are. Human capital. And in a lot of cases, we were talking the other day in some of the I can't get the name of them now, but when the sheriffs house, correction
Yes.
inmates.
They take them out and work.
They take them out and work. And
Yeah.
the sheriff was saying, they need to give us more money per inmate. He said, we have an industry down there that they're training them and putting them back to work, and they're paying them 25 to 30 cents an hour. I said, I
30
can't
cents
go.
an hour?
I can't go anywhere telling people that like it's a good thing. That sounds horrible. And so but that's what we're doing with prisons, and that's it's like you're making money on the backs of people and paying them nothing and treating them just like we're back in slavery. So, we can do better. We can do better, and I'm going to go back over there today at 2:00, and we're going to bring up some legislation. And somebody's going to say, I'm going to offer an amendment, and they're going to say, oh, here Robert Johnson comes again. But that's my job.
Keep coming.
Yeah, you got to keep hammering. You got to keep coming at them. You got to do that because people elect you to represent, to be a representative government. So that means you have a job to do. There are interests out there. There are people out there that don't have lobbyists. I am their lobbyist, their representative. Lobbyists shouldn't be making laws anyway, but there's a proliferation of lobbyists at the Capitol. Some of them do. Some are good people. Some of them are just there making a living, and they don't care, and they're pushing legislation that shouldn't be good. But our job is to be the discerning person in the room to say, okay, that's fine, but I got a job to do for the people I represent. And one of the things I have to do is make sure that we're not taking advantage of the people that we represent. And in the prison industry, that's exactly what we're doing.
Right. I mean, when you say 30, 35 cents an hour,
right.
But you've got some training.
Yeah.
And all of this, that's worse than the documented illegals.
Right. I mean, you got training, but they've trained you, and over a 5-year period, you may have been able to save $50 because it's 30 cents an hour. When you get out, that training won't do you any good because nobody wants to hire a felon. So
right.
It's like you served your time, you've done the work, and then you still got to walk around with a record. But that's another thing we're working on is that after, having people's records expunged, if they're nonviolent offenses, having them, when you get out of prison, clean your record up and make it like it doesn't exist anymore. And you're just a regular person. You don't have to put on an application that you've been convicted of a crime. There'll be no record of it. That ought to happen. If you've done your time, you've done your service, let me start over. Let it be a real starting over.
Be a real starting over.
That's right.
Now, has Mississippi ever considered in your 30 years about a reentry program?
No.
Maybe move them to a halfway house within 90 days of them getting out?
What we do, we have that. We have halfway houses. But what they've done is turn them into restitution centers. And it's not 30 cents an hour, but they get out and then they're working to pay off their fines and their debt, and they're there. Well, that's part of the system. But it's funny you bring that up. One of the reasons a lot of people are still locked up is because they're locked up and they don't have any relatives. They don't have a house to go to. When they release you, you have to be able to identify an address to go to. And some people are still in prison because they don't have an address.
But that reentry program that I'm talking about would do that.
Absolutely.
Because you go there and you do find you a job.
Right.
And the people who work the reentry program will help you find a job or something so you can pay your fines and get, like I said, it's important to get an ID. If you've been in prison for all these years, your ID is probably...
You can't get an ID if you don't have an address. I mean, all those things. I'm glad you brought that up because we reentry programs is also part of our criminal justice agenda, and we have dropped those bills as well.
The feds do it.
The feds do it, and I think right now, the new commissioner, whatever you think of him, he is so overwhelmed, and the system is so difficult to manage that those kind of bills, those kind of laws he actually is a person that is becoming sort of a partner saying, oh, yeah, look, I can't, you got to do something. And these ideas that these gentlemen and ladies have is something that we ought to be able to work on. So.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. And there are so many more things we are going to have to find some time to talk about.
We'll do it again.
You'll have to come back and update us on what's going over in the State House, because it's always a challenge, and I know this.
120-day session, so we got plenty of time.
Well, so that time will be gone before you know it.
You got time to invite me back. We'll do
okay.
that. Okay,
yeah. Well, we can do that, and we can do it even after the session is over.
Yeah.
But I thank you so much for joining us here today on Unmuted, and we're done.
Thank you, Judge.
We'll be right back after this break.